I never thought I'd be the kind of person to keep receipts, but when you're treated like a tenant in your own childhood home while your brother gets to live like royalty, you learn to document everything. My name is Sarah, and this is the story of how paying rent to my own parents became the best investment I ever made. It started when I was 22, fresh out of college with a degree in accounting and a job at a small firm in downtown Portland, Oregon. The rain was coming down hard that October morning when I sat at our kitchen table, the same one where I'd done homework for years, and watched my mom slide a piece of paper across to me. It was a rental agreement. "Honey, now that you're working full-time, we think it's fair that you contribute to the household," she said, not meeting my eyes. The coffee in my mug had gone cold, but I wrapped my hands around it anyway, needing something warm to hold on to. I looked at the paper, $400 a month plus utilities. For my childhood bedroom that still had glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. "What about Jake?" I asked, referring to my older brother who was 25 and had been living in the basement, rent-free for 3 years since dropping out of his master's program. My dad looked up from his newspaper. "Jake's still figuring things out. He's working on his music career." Jake's music career consisted of playing guitar in his underwear until 2 in the morning and selling maybe one song every 6 months on some obscure website. But apparently, that was enough to earn him free room and board while I, with my steady job and regular income, needed to pay rent. I signed the paper. What choice did I have? Moving out would have cost me twice as much, and I was trying to save money. I told myself it was temporary, just until I could afford my own place. That was the beginning of 4 years that changed everything about how I saw my family. Living as a paying tenant in your childhood home is a special kind of humiliation. Suddenly, every little thing became a negotiation. When I wanted to have friends over, my mom would remind me that other tenants lived here too, meaning Jake, who never paid a dime. When I left dishes in the sink, it was a violation of house rules. When Jake left pizza boxes stacked on the counter for days, it was just boys being boys. The worst part was watching my parents bend over backward to accommodate Jake's every whim. When he decided he needed a better amp for his music, they bought it. When he wanted to convert part of the garage into a studio, my dad spent his weekend building soundproofing. When Jake's car broke down, they paid for repairs without question. When my car needed new tires, I got a lecture about budgeting and responsibility. I started keeping track of everything. Not out of spite, but because my accounting brain needed to make sense of the number. In a small notebook, I recorded every rent payment, every utility bill I split, every grocery run where I bought food for the house. $400 in rent, about $60 in utilities, roughly $200 in groceries I shared with everyone. I was contributing over $600 a month to a household where my brother contributed nothing but dirty laundry and late-night guitar solos. The real breaking point came during my 26th birthday. It was a Saturday in July, and Portland was having one of those perfect summer days where the air smells like roses and coffee, and Mount Hood looks close enough to touch. My parents had planned a family barbecue in the backyard. Nothing fancy, just burgers and my mom's potato salad. I had worked extra hours that week to take the afternoon off, and I was genuinely excited. It had been months since we'd all just hung out together without any drama. I even bought steaks instead of hamburger meat, thinking I'd treat everyone to something special. The guests started arriving around 2. My Aunt Linda and Uncle Bob, a few family friends, some neighbors, normal birthday stuff. I was manning the grill, feeling good about the steaks I'd splurged on, when I overheard my mom talking to my Aunt Linda by the patio table. "We're so proud of Jake," she was saying, her voice carrying that particular tone parents use when they're bragging. "He's really found his passion with music. We're supporting his dream because we know he's going to make it big." "That's wonderful," Aunt Linda replied. "It's so important to follow your dreams. What about Sarah?" There was a pause. I flipped a steak and pretended not to listen, but my heart was already sinking. "Oh, Sarah's doing fine. She's got her accounting job. Very stable. She's always been our practical one. She even pays rent now. Very responsible." The way she said it, like paying rent was some kind of cute hobby I'd picked up, made my stomach twist. I was contributing more to this household than anyone, except my dad. But I was just the practical one, while Jake was the dreamer, worthy of investment and sacrifice. But it got worse. Later, when we were all sitting around the patio table eating cake, Uncle Bob asked Jake about his music. Jake launched into this whole speech about his artistic vision, and how commercial music was selling out, and how he was creating something pure and meaningful. Everyone nodded along like he was some kind of philosopher. Then my dad stood up and cleared his throat. Actually, we have some exciting news about Jake's music. My mom beamed. We've decided to help Jake record a professional album. We found this great studio in Seattle, and we're going to cover the costs, so he can really showcase his talent. The table erupted in congratulations and excitement. Everyone was clapping and asking Jake questions about his music and the recording process. I sat there, a forkful of my own birthday cake halfway to my mouth, and realized that no one had even acknowledged that it was my birthday beyond the obligatory happy birthday when they arrived. How much is that going to cost? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. $15,000, my dad said proudly, like he was announcing a college scholarship. It's a big investment, but we believe in Jake's talent. $15,000. I did the math in my head. Automatically, that was more than 2 years of my rent payments. That was money that could have helped me with a down payment on my own place. Money that could have gone toward the family vacation we hadn't taken in years, because it was too expensive. Money that could have helped with my mom's dental work she'd been putting off. But it was going to Jake, for a recording that maybe 10 people would ever listen to, because he was following his dreams, and I was just practical Sarah who paid rent. I excused myself to get more ice cream, and stood in the kitchen for a full 5 minutes, gripping the counter and trying not to cry. Through the window I could hear everyone still talking about Jake's album, planning the recording sessions, like they were planning a wedding. That night, after everyone went home and my parents went to bed, I sat in my room with my laptop, and did something I'd been thinking about for months. I started looking at real estate, not apartments for rent, houses for sale. I'd been saving money for years, living at home and paying minimal rent compared to market rates, putting away every extra penny. Between my savings, my steady job, and the small inheritance from my grandmother that I'd barely touched, I had more money than I'd realized. Enough for a down payment, maybe enough for more than that. I spent the next few weeks obsessively researching the housing market, driving through neighborhoods after work, attending open houses on weekends. My parents assumed I was just being responsible, maybe looking into investment property. They had no idea I was planning my escape. The house showed up on my real estate app on a Tuesday morning in August. It was 3 blocks away from my parents' house, a 1950s ranch style with good bones but dated everything. The listing had been up for 2 weeks, with no offers, probably because it needed cosmetic work, and most buyers wanted move-in ready. But I saw potential, and more importantly, I saw freedom. The asking price was $180,000, which was reasonable for the neighborhood. I had been pre-approved for a mortgage, but as I stared at the listing photos, an idea started forming in my head. A crazy, impulsive, completely unlike me idea. What if I didn't get a mortgage? What if I bought it outright? I had been saving for 8 years. Since I was 18, I had grandmother's inheritance, my emergency fund, my house fund, and a small investment account I'd been growing since college. If I liquidated everything, if I cashed out my retirement accounts and paid the penalties, if I used every single penny I had, I could do it. I could buy a house with cash. It would wipe out my savings completely. It would mean starting over financially, but it would also mean owning something that was completely mine, something no one could take away or make me pay rent for. I called my real estate agent that afternoon. The inspection was on a Friday. The house had good bones, just like I thought. New roof, solid foundation, updated electrical. The kitchen was stuck in 1987, and the bathrooms needed work, but nothing I couldn't handle over time. I made an offer that weekend. Cash, no contingencies, close in 2 weeks. The sellers accepted immediately. I didn't tell my parents what I was doing. Not yet. I wanted to have keys in my hand before I made any announcement, but it was impossible to hide the appraisal visits and the final walkthrough. So I told them I was looking into buying an investment property. That's very smart, honey, my mom said. Real estate is always a good investment. Your dad and I bought this house for $30,000 back in Can you believe that? I could believe it. Their house was now worth over $400,000. a fact I'd looked up on Zillow more times than I wanted to admit. The closing was on a Wednesday morning. I took the day off work and sat in a lawyer's office, signing paper after paper, writing the biggest check of my life. When the lawyer handed me the keys, I just stared at them for a moment. They were mine. The house was mine. I drove straight from the lawyer's office to the house and let myself in with my own key. It was empty and quiet, and sunlight was streaming through the living room windows. I walked through every room slowly, touching the walls, opening closets, just absorbing the fact that this was all mine. Then I called my parents and asked if I could take them to dinner that weekend. I had something I wanted to tell them. Saturday night, we went to Olive Garden, which was my dad's favorite because of the unlimited breadsticks. We made small talk through the appetizers and main courses, my parents updating me on neighborhood gossip and my mom's book club. Jake wasn't there. He had a gig at some coffee shop that probably 3 people would attend. During dessert, I took a breath and made my announcement. I bought a house, I said simply. My parents looked confused. You mean you made an offer on that investment property? My dad asked. No, I said. I bought a house for me to live in. I close next week, and I'll be moving out. The silence that followed was deafening. My mom put down her spoon. Moving out? She repeated like I'd announced I was moving to Mars. Yes, I bought the blue ranch house on Maple Street, 3 blocks from you guys. My dad blinked. How are you financing it? Those mortgages can be tricky for young people. This was the moment I'd been both dreading and anticipating. I paid cash, I said. More silence, a long, stretching silence where I could practically hear my parents recalculating everything they thought they knew about my financial situation. Cash, my mom whispered. $175,000. Cash. My dad's breadstick stopped halfway to his mouth. How do you have that kind of money? I could have been diplomatic. I could have talked about my savings and my inheritance and my investments. Instead, I decided to be honest. I've been saving every penny for 8 years. I've been living like a college student, driving a 10-year-old car, buying my clothes at Target, never taking vacation. And for the last 4 years, I've been paying you rent and utilities and groceries while watching you fund Jake's lifestyle completely. So I saved, and I invested, and I was careful, and now I have enough money to buy my own house. The math was sinking in for them. 4 years of rent payments, 4 years of watching me contribute to the household while Jake contributed nothing, 4 years of treating me like a tenant while treating him like a beloved son whose dreams needed financing. We didn't know you were saving that much, my mom said weakly. You didn't ask, I replied. You assumed that because I was paying rent, I wasn't getting ahead. You assumed that because I wasn't following some artistic dream, I wasn't worth investing in. You've been so focused on supporting Jake's potential that you never noticed I was actually succeeding. My dad cleared his throat. We're proud of you, Sarah. We always have been. Are you? Because it feels like you're proud of Jake for spending your money on recording equipment, but you've never once acknowledged that I've been contributing to this family's finances since I was 22. The conversation got uncomfortable after that. We paid the check and drove home in silence. But something had shifted. For the first time in years, I felt like I had their attention. Moving day was a Saturday in September. I hired movers for the big stuff, but mostly I didn't have much. 4 years of living in my childhood bedroom meant I'd never really accumulated adult furniture or household items. My new house was going to be pretty empty for a while, but it was going to be mine. My parents helped, which surprised me. My dad loaded boxes into his truck, and my mom packed my kitchen supplies with the same care she'd used when I went to college. Jake showed up too, though he mostly stood around looking confused by the whole situation. I still can't believe you bought a house, he said, watching the movers carry my mattress out to their truck. I still can't believe you're 29 and have never paid rent, I replied. He laughed, thinking I was joking. I was. That first night in my new house, I ordered pizza and sat on the living room floor, eating it straight from the box. The house was quiet in a different way than my childhood home had been. This was my quiet, my space, my rule. I stayed up until midnight, walking through the rooms, planning what I wanted to do with each space. The kitchen would need to be gutted eventually, but for now, I could live with the avocado green appliance. The master bedroom was bigger than my old room, with 2 windows and enough space for an actual dresser. The second bedroom would be my office. The third bedroom, well, I'd figure that out. The backyard was small but had an old apple tree that would be beautiful in the spring. I made a mental note to learn about pruning and fertilizing. I'd never had a yard before, but I was looking forward to trying. Living alone was an adjustment. I'd gone from my dorm room to my childhood bedroom, so I'd never really been by myself. The first few weeks were strange. No one to share grocery costs with. No one to blame for dirty dishes. No one's schedule to work around, but my own. I loved it. I could cook what I wanted, when I wanted. I could watch TV without negotiating over the remote. I could have friends over without asking permission or clearing it with other family members. I could paint the walls any color I chose. The freedom was intoxicating, but it was also expensive. Suddenly, I was responsible for all the utilities, all the maintenance, all the household supplies. My savings account, which had been growing steadily for years, was now completely empty. I was starting over financially, but I was starting over as a homeowner. I threw myself into fixing up the house. Weekends became trips to Home Depot and YouTube tutorials on everything from installing new light fixtures to refinishing hardwood floors. I learned to tile, to paint, trim, to replace faucets. Each improvement made the house feel more mine. 3 months after moving in, I hosted my first Thanksgiving. I'd never cooked a turkey before, but I was determined to figure it out. I invited my parents, Jake, and a few friends from work. My dining room table was a folding table I'd bought at Costco, and my chairs were a mismatched collection from garage sales. But it was mine. My parents arrived early to help with the cooking, though I suspected they also wanted to see what I'd done with the place. My mom walked through the house slowly, taking in the fresh paint and new curtains, the way I'd arranged furniture to make the small spaces feel bigger. "You've done a beautiful job, honey," she said, and I could hear something in her voice that hadn't been there before. Respect, maybe recognition. Dinner was a success, despite the fact that I definitely overcooked the turkey. Everyone was full and happy, sitting around my mismatched table in my living room, when Jake asked the question I'd been waiting for. "So how much did this place cost you?" Really? I'd been dreading this conversation, but I'd also been looking forward to it. $175,000. I said, "Cash. But where did you get that kind of money?" He pressed. "I mean, you're an accountant, not a lawyer or a doctor." I looked around the table at my parents, my brother, my friends. Everyone was waiting for my answer. "I saved it," I said simply. "For 8 years, I saved every extra penny. I lived below my means. I invested wisely, and I didn't spend money on things I didn't need." "But how much could you really save on an accountant's salary?" Jake continued. I could have deflected. I could have changed the subject. Instead, I decided to be completely honest. My starting salary was $38,000. I'm making $55,000 now. After taxes and essential expenses, I was saving about $1,500 a month, more in years when I got bonuses or tax refunds. Add in grandma's inheritance and some smart investments, and it adds up. The table was quiet. I could see my parents doing math in their heads. $1,500 a month, my dad repeated. "Even while paying rent," I added pointedly. Jake looked genuinely confused. "But what about having fun? What about traveling? Or going out? Or buying nice things?" "I had fun," I said. "I just had cheap fun. I went hiking instead of taking expensive vacations. I cooked instead of eating out. I bought my clothes at thrift stores and drove a used car. I prioritized my future over my present comfort." "That sounds awful," Jake said. "It sounds disciplined," my mom said quietly, and everyone looked at her in surprise. She was staring at her plate, but when she looked up, her eyes were bright. "It sounds like something we should have encouraged more." After everyone left, I was cleaning up the dishes when my dad came back into the kitchen. "Can I help?" he asked. We washed dishes in comfortable silence for a few minutes before he spoke again. "I owe you an apology," he said. "I kept scrubbing the turkey pan." "For what?" "For not seeing what you were accomplishing, for taking your contributions for granted while we worried about Jake's future. You were building your future and we didn't even notice." I set down the pan, and looked at him. My dad wasn't usually one for emotional conversations, so this was significant. I just wanted to be treated fairly, I said. You weren't, he admitted. We convinced ourselves that Jake needed more help because he was struggling, but we didn't realize we were penalizing you for being successful. It was the conversation I'd been waiting 4 years to have. Christmas that year was different. We had it at my house, since I now had the space and was eager to host. I'd finished the kitchen renovation in November, replacing the avocado appliances with stainless steel and painting the cabinets white. The house looked completely different from when I'd bought it. Jake brought his girlfriend, a nice girl named Emma, who seemed impressed by my house and asked a lot of questions about home ownership and saving money. I found myself giving her advice about budgeting and investing, feeling like some kind of financial mentor. I wish I'd been smarter about money when I was younger, she said as we were cleaning up after dinner. It's never too late to start, I told her. The most important thing is to pay yourself first, before you pay anyone else, even family members. You save something for yourself. I caught my parents exchanging a look across the room. The new year brought changes I hadn't expected. My parents started asking my advice about financial decisions. They wanted to refinance their mortgage, and my dad asked me to look at the paperwork. My mom started talking about retirement planning and wondered if I could help her understand her 401k. Most surprisingly, they started charging Jake rent. It wasn't much, just $200 a month, but it was something. Jake complained loudly and frequently, but he paid it. He also started picking up more gigs and talking about getting a day job to supplement his music income. I can't believe Mom and Dad are making me pay rent now, he grumbled to me one day when he came over to borrow my lawnmower. Welcome to adulthood, I said, not unsympathetically. It's not so bad once you get used to it, but you bought a whole house, he pointed out. I can barely afford $200 a month. Then maybe it's time to reassess your priorities, I suggested. He looked around my living room, taking in the built-in bookshelves I'd installed, the hardwood floors I'd refinished, the fireplace I'd learned to use properly. Do you think I could do this? He asked. Buy a house, I mean. If you want to badly enough, I said. But you'd have to change a lot about how you think about money and work and priorities. Maybe I should get a real job, he said thoughtfully. Music can be a real job, I said, but it has to pay real money, consistently, if you want to build a real life on it. 6 months later, Jake got hired as a music teacher at a local elementary school. He still played gigs on weekends, but now he had steady income and health insurance. He moved out of my parents' basement and into a small apartment across town. My parents seemed both relieved and a little lost. They'd spent so many years focused on Jake's needs that they didn't quite know what to do with themselves, now that both their children were independent adults. But they figured it out. My dad started volunteering at a literacy program. My mom joined a hiking club and started taking photography classes. They began traveling, taking the vacations they'd put off for years, while supporting Jake's dreams. And they started treating me differently. Not like the responsible child who would always be fine, but like an adult whose opinions and achievements mattered. They bragged about my house to their friends. They asked for my advice on their own projects. They acknowledged my success instead of taking it for granted. It took buying my own house for my parents to see me as an adult. It took financial independence for them to respect my choices. It shouldn't have been necessary, but it was worth it. 2 years after buying my house, I got a promotion at work and a significant raise. For the first time since moving out, I had substantial money left over after paying my bills. I started building my savings again, but I also started allowing myself some of the luxuries I'd foregone for so many years. I took a vacation to Hawaii. I bought a new car. I hired a landscaper to design my backyard and turn it into something beautiful. And I started dating someone seriously for the first time in years. His name was David, and he was a teacher at the high school where my friend worked. He was impressed by my house, but more importantly, he was impressed by the story of how I'd gotten it. You bought this place with cash when you were 26, he asked on our third date, as I was giving him the tour. 27, I corrected. And yet, it seemed crazy at the time, but it was the best decision I ever made. It's amazing, he said, running his hand along the kitchen counter I'd installed myself. You built this whole life for yourself. That's exactly what I'd done. I'd built a life for myself. From the ground up, literally and figuratively. Last month, my parents asked if David and I wanted to join them for their anniversary dinner. It was a nice restaurant, the kind of place they wouldn't have been able to afford when they were supporting Jake's recording dreams. As we were looking at the menu, my dad made an announcement. Your mother and I have been talking, he said, and we want to do something we should have done years ago. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. What's this? I asked. It's a check, my mom said, for all the rent you paid us. With interest. I stared at the envelope, not opening it. You don't need to do this, I said. Yes, we do, my dad replied. We took money from you when we should have been helping you save for your future. We treated you like a tenant instead of our daughter. This doesn't make up for that, but it's a start. I opened the envelope. The check was for $22,000. $22,000. Enough to finish my basement renovation. Enough to take that European vacation I'd been dreaming about. Enough to max out my retirement contributions for the year. But more than the money, it was an acknowledgement, an admission that they'd been wrong, and an attempt to make it right. Thank you, I said, and I meant it. We had a beautiful dinner that night, the four of us talking and laughing like a normal family. David fit in perfectly, asking my parents about their travels and telling stories about his students. It felt like the family dynamic I'd always wanted but never quite had. As we were walking to our cars afterward, my mom hugged me tight. I'm proud of you, she whispered in my ear. Not just for the house or the money you saved, but for the woman you became. You did it all on your own, and you did it right. It had taken 10 years, but I finally heard the words I'd been waiting for my whole life. Now, 3 years after buying my house, I have a home that's completely mine and completely paid for. I have parents who respect me as an adult and value my opinion. I have a brother who's learned to support himself and is building his own independent life. I have a relationship with someone who appreciates what I've accomplished and wants to build a future together. And I have the satisfaction of knowing that every sacrifice I made, every dollar I saved, every month of rent I paid while my brother lived free, led me to exactly where I'm supposed to be. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. Sometimes it's getting ahead.